Okay, the very first thing I do when I'm setting up a new DNA 133, 75, or 200, obviously, is plug it in and give it a name that I will recognize from now on. I have several of these devices. This happens to be a Fields Mod Saber. It then downloads the default profile, which is the way Fields sets his up, is just kind of a default thing. And then you're going to need to be sure, and in SP3 of the Evolve software, go into the menu there as I'm showing and make sure you're in the manufacturer mode. That will give you the option of going to mode and go down and make sure that it's set, that the electrical mod resistance is set as 0, which is the default. And if it wasn't, you will need to upload it as I'm doing here. At that point, you can update your software if you need to the most current version. This came with an older version of the DNA 75 Evolve software firmware, and once that's done, as has been done here, you can switch over to the General tab and click on the Atomize Analyzer. At this point, you'll want to insert your brass short pin, is what I would call it. It's a brass thing that fits into the 510. It's just a plug that has as little resistance as possible. I clean that very thoroughly before I insert it into the mod, and as I'm going screwing it into the mod, when it first makes connection, barely touching, the resistance will be kind of high. This has a adjustable, spring-loaded 510 connection, and you'll notice that if I screw it all the way in to where it's absolutely tight, it went down to that 0.003 you saw just a second ago. As I'm unscrewing it to release tension on the spring, it will change slightly, and you'll see it going up to 0.06, 0.07. I'm going to go ahead and screw it all the way back out to where it's barely touching, kind of slowly, and you'll see that it rises some until it suddenly is just barely touching and doesn't really touch, and you get the significant jump that you just saw on the screen a second ago. I'll then screw it back in, all the way in, and what I'm going to try to do is kind of find an average from all the way in to about where I think the shallowest 510 atomizer connection pin will stick down. In this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and use 0.004. You'll watch me play with it for a minute here as I'm trying a few, screwing it in, screwing it out a little bit, and seeing that it goes up to about 0.05 maybe, is about the highest I'm realistically going to see for a very shallow pin. And as I noted earlier, 0.03 is all the way in. So in this particular case, I'm going to use 0.004. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and eventually here unscrew the mod, unscrew the 510 connection until it's completely off, and close that box, and switch back to the mod thing and type in to the mod resistance the 0.004 I've decided is the most appropriate and upload that to the device. And that's all there is to it. Okay, the second thing I'm going to do is set the battery. I've got a 3 large loops on a Altus Tsunami atomizer I have laying around of Canthal that I've pulled through to make equal to about 0.5 ohms. I then put a fan on it and blow on it. It really doesn't get warm, but when it's firing, and I'm going to use 40 watts, it could, and I'm a little afraid of it, so I use this. A better system is a resistor system. If you happen to be able to put that together yourself, more power to you. But this seems to work fine for me, and again, it's at about 0.5 with Canthal in 3 large loops to total 0.5 that I can keep cool. Okay, now we're going to set up the battery. So within the same mod screen, click on Battery Analyzer and say, yep, you know what you're doing. And I'm going to use 40 watts, which is the default, and click on OK. And you're going to see that it starts out at 4.18, which was as fully charged as I could get the battery on a external charger. And it's charging at about 0.45 or whatever that says there from the USB port of the computer. And it's going to take it a little while to decide that it is fully charged. It's going to attempt to go to 4.20. For whatever reason, every one of Ashley's mods that I have, Ashley Fields mods that I have, typically only go up to about 4.18. But I'm going to click Start, and it's going to start attempting to make sure that the battery is fully charged. And I'm going to fast forward to the start of where it gets beyond this. It takes several minutes. After waiting several minutes, it finally decides that it's as fully charged as it's going to be. And here in a second, the voltage to the unit drops completely off to 0, and it quits charging. And there it goes. And then here in a second, it's going to start firing the mod at the 40 watts that I told it to test the mod with. And you'll watch it go here in a second. So it's getting ready to go. It's waiting for the battery to settle. Which just takes a second. Then it fires. Right there it's firing at 40 watts, and it's using up some of the battery, and it's calculating how much battery usage this 40 watts is, and then it stops. And lets the battery go back to settle at some slightly lower amount while it's still not charging it. And then after it fully settles, or as much as it allows it to settle, it fires again. This process is going to continue, and it's going to count up how many watt hours the battery is capable of doing, firing in this manner that you're watching it fire. Again, I'm going to stop and just fast forward, because this takes about, different size batteries take different lengths of time. A quality 26650 takes somewhere in the vicinity of an hour and a half. So I'm going to stop right here. Okay, the unit is almost completely empty now. It's used almost all of the battery. It is firing. It actually starts having difficulty maintaining 40 amps or 40 watts, particularly on a single 18650 unit. The 26650s seem to maintain 40 a little bit better, but when it fires, it actually starts, it'll tell you on the unit in the front that it's got low battery and problems with it, but that's because the battery's low. It still maintains 40 watts for a very brief period. You may note that the amount of time that it's at 40 watts is reduced as it gets very close to the end here, which it is actually completely finished at this point. It is telling you that the total battery capacity was, I can't read it on my screen, but 14 point something. And at that point, or at least once you realize you've reached that point and are paying attention, you can go click on accept. Now, as a warning, it hasn't been uploaded to the unit at this point. So if you don't upload it to the unit, you can just have used up all of your battery and did yourself no good because you didn't put it into the firmware to be used. But anyway, I click accept there, and then a very good thing to do at this point is to go over and save that battery profile. I have all of those are battery profiles for various units that I've calibrated, and I'm going to give it a name so that I can always load it back if I mess anything up. Sorry about the Facebook thing popping up. But I do something like give it the name of the mod with the name of the battery and the amount of watt hours that were computed, and save it. I'm not going to show it, but you should upload it to the mod right now. I actually didn't and had to do it, load that, and then load it later. Alright, the next thing to do on this is to set the case temperature, case thermals. And I'm showing here that the mod is basically at room temperature, which you want to set it someplace where you know the exact temperature, so that when you hit this button and click on OK, you can type in the room temperature. And you want, like your AC, to maintain that temperature throughout the entire 3+ hours that this will run. Once you click on run, which I do quickly so that I'm not heating up the mod by USB charging, and it will immediately go down to this 0 and quit warming up the mod. And then it allows the mod to come down to temperature but it doesn't really get down to temperature unless you've already got the mod at basically room temperature. So do this after you've completely cooled the mod in a room you know the temperature of. And the unit will cool off to room temperature and then start charging at a different rate, at full rate at start, and then it'll cool, and then it'll charge it again at about half of the voltage that it can charge it at, so that it can determine how long it takes to warm up, how long it takes to cool down, how much change that you have through different amounts of USB charging, and insert all those values into the thermal properties of the mod. This allows the mod to know what the room temperature is better, and to know that it's being charged or not, or know that when it's charged it's being warmed up. And when you put a cold addy on the unit, it will know how much to adjust the ohms downward or upward, so that it would be at 70 degrees is what it's trying to set the cold ohm temperatures to, or cold temperature ohms to. The screen went blank after 15 minutes, so I'm going to cut away to where it comes back up, and I did save a couple seconds of that to show you. Okay, I'm about to wake the computer back up, and it'll just flash, and you'll see that it changes from the waiting for 44 point whatever minutes left to the final results at the top of the dialog box, and there's the answers, and you need at that point to accept them and then upload it to the mod. Okay, here I'm going to show you how I set up the screen. I changed the way the battery, what's displayed as it's charging, so that I can look at the mod while it's charging and get the various results, or know how far it is from charge, percent, and everything else. And I do that for both the, whether it's temperature controlled or standard, doesn't matter much to me when it's charging. That's what I pick. And then I pick that I see the last temperature and last wattage, so that I can look at the unit and determine whether or not it's been reaching temperature or it's not, or at least give myself a pretty good idea if it's cutting temperature back, or if it's right at the temperature and it's indicating the wattage is way down, then I know I haven't, that I'm not actually needing as much wattage as I'm applying. And then change the battery to where the battery amount, so that I can see it when it's charging. You may not want to. I then change the idle time down to 15 seconds so that it doesn't stay lit for a long period of time. I prefer it set up on the right versus the left, that just flips the display. And I turn the number of error messages down to 2, just because I don't normally like to see error messages. I don't mind seeing, but if reaching temperature, it also flashes it as an error message. So with all of that set, I upload that to the mod, and now I've got my display set up the way I want. Okay, now we're getting into the very last few things. I set up my theme. You can change the colors for DNA 75s to various things. I don't mess with that. I do change it to where it jumps in increments of 0.5, because I don't run so low that little bit makes any difference. I change how long the initial display shows up and the secondary display shows up, just to get it up faster. And I guess I'm uploading it to the device there, so that's set. Then on materials, I've already preloaded it with these materials. You may have ones you want. You can just open a CSV file and from your computer and upload different ones, or you could create one from Steam. You need to get Ari's SSV wire from Ari, but if you got some kind of unusual wire, you can go to Steam and do that. And the only thing that makes any difference on this screen is the type of material. You can change everything else you want, but you still get the same file. So I'm going to create silver, and then you go to the DNA thing and you download the silver CSV file. Let me go move this and put it on my desktop. And whatever name you give it is what it's going to appear at in the list. So I change it all to read something like just silver. I change Ari's to read SSV 0.5 type stuff. Once that's saved, then just close Steam and open the file and find where you saved it, in this case on my desktop, and silver, and open, and now it'll appear right there, and then you just add it. And I've added all those other ones that are there. I don't want it, so I'm going to delete it, but you see where you can put the names that will appear on your screen as you're using it. But the ones I use are nickel, stainless steel, SSV 0.4, 0.5, and 0.6, and stainless steel 316L. Upload whatever materials you're going to use for coils. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is setting up the different profiles. This is highly subjective on what is appropriate. What I always end up doing is setting the first one to wattage, so it's just straight up wattage mode in case to preheat wire and all sorts of other reasons. I actually have that saved because you can save each of these as power, and it gives it a name that I'm familiar with and recognize. On profile 2, I set it up as a straight up temperature control thing. So you just set the temperature and the thing monitor it preheats it as fast as it can to that and stays at that. So it's maximum wattage, and it just brings it immediately with an 11 hit to bring it to that. And I call it temperature control just to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and change that to 0.5 SSV. That's my most common wire. For 3, this particular mod I'm going to use a Rose 3 on, so I've already been using the Rose 3 and figured out what temperatures and stuff I like, and this should work just fine because this unit is calibrated just like the unit that I use to decide these values on. And actually I've changed it to 27.5, and I remember doing that, so I'm updating it. 4, I have a default one, which is what I want. It's just basically to show that there's nothing. Well, actually, let me go ahead and add another one that is a pretty common ADDI for me, a Hurricane with 7 wraps. So I can just always throw the Hurricane on there and use it. And then from that point, I'm just going to use the defaults. I'm looking around to see if there's anything else I want to add. I'm considering a few that I've created, but you know what? Realistically, I'm not going to use anything on this mod except the Rose 3. That's going to be dedicated to it pretty much. So I don't see anything else I'm going to add. I'll go back up and choose my default profile, which more or less is a blank profile. Let me do that now. Default. Alright, so that's set. Then you can go to the different ones and you can copy profiles from one of the other ones, and I'm just going to copy them 1, 2, 3, so those are all the same. You can set them up any way you want to. This is just the way I choose to set up my mods. Once you've done that, I've got a wattage mode, one for the individual ADDI, or a couple for the individual ADDIs I'm going to use, and a temperature control mode to just set it and forget it. And you don't get the best vape that way, but it'll tell you how warm you actually want it, and you can adjust that one. I do temperature dominant, so I know how warm I like a particular ADDI to try to center around. And unit's totally set up.